Hi there, thank you very much for watching this video. So today is the 20th of September 2024. So in my previous video regarding PHP, I was showing how we could set up or package the actual PHP app that we are developing into a .far file, .phar, which stands for PHP archive, and then we can have that packaged into a bundle that we can run on the Windows desktop. First of all, using a Windows batch script here, like this. Here we have step 1, and so if I just click on that, and what this does is that this just starts the local web server for PHP using the PHP command. And then after that, I can just click on this file here, step2.html, which is the web page that redirects to the actual web app, which is run locally on the server. So this is how we can run a PHP web app as a local app on the desktop inside Windows. And here's the source code for these two files. First of all, in step1.bat, we have this PHP command here, which runs the local web server on the local machine. And then after that, we have this HTML file here, which simply just redirects to that local host at port 8000 using the meta tag to redirect the page to that URL after 0 seconds, which is to say immediately. And then after that, we have a third source code file, which is the one at the local host at port 8000, which is the index.php, and this file here just simply requires the myfile.far file, and then it extracts the image file. Because unfortunately, even though we can archive the images and other assets into the .far file, we can't refer to those images from within the far file. We need to extract the actual images and other assets, which are non-PHP file types, out of the far file into some folder in the file system, so that the actual PHP code can refer to them from within the far file. So once it's done that, once it's extracted that, then it displays the web page without any problems. So that was how I packaged this particular web app as a desktop app that runs inside Windows. But this is reliant on PHP being pre-installed on the user's computer. What if we want to distribute an app to users on their Windows system, and we don't want the users to have to install PHP themselves? Then what we can do is that we can package PHP within the actual zip file that we deliver to the users. So I mentioned in the previous video that if we were to include that in the zip file, then as a zip file, then it wouldn't be too large, because it's just 31 megabytes, which isn't all that massive nowadays in 2024. And the zip file extracts out to about 85 megabytes in terms of disk usage, which again isn't all that massive. It's quite big, 85 megabytes, but we're not talking, hundreds of megabytes. But what if is there perhaps some key runtime libraries that we can package instead of the entire PHP installation? Well, I found a way to do this, but I need to stress that this is unofficial. This is a hack that I've just discovered myself that works for me. But that is not to say that it's something that will continue to work in the future. But this is something that I can show now that worked for me, whereby we can just cut down on the size of the file that we deliver to users. So first of all, to explain how to do this, I'll just tidy up the files in this folder. So I'll just delete the files that we don't need. So this was created as an example, this index.zip here, which contains the actual files that we deliver to the users. We don't need this, so I'll just delete that. And as well as that, I can delete the step1.bat and step2.html as well, because we'll be doing things slightly differently. And then as regards this zip file here, which contains the entire functionality for the running of PHP 8.3.11. What I'll do is that we'll need this in a moment, so I'll just keep this there for now. So I'll just test. So apart from this 31 megabyte zip file for the installation of PHP, then everything here that we have now is just the very basic app that we had before that just runs from the myfar.far file, and it contains the folder for this image here that is required because even though that we can archive images and videos and other assets like that into the far file, unfortunately we can't refer to them and use them from within the far file. We need to extract them into an external folder that is external to the far file, so that the actual resources or the actual URLs and the PHP files in the far file can locate these assets in the file system. So I'll just, first of all, before I do anything else, I just need to make sure that everything's working fine. So here I am in the bash shell in the min-gw or minimal GNU for Windows terminal window here, which is inside the bash shell, which runs on top of Windows. So I can make changes directly to the Windows file system from within the bash shell, but in the same time I've got this Linux shell that is running that I can use to do those changes in. So here is the folder that we had before, and this is the far file, this is the index.php, and this is the img folder. So in order to run this app, what we need to do is that we need to run php -s capital S in order to initialize the local web server at port 8000. So we just specify localhost :8000 and then specify -t and then // specify that the actual root folder begins in the current folder. So I just press enter on that, and so now I just need to open up a browser tab. So here's the browser tab opened at localhost :8000, and it's picked up the index.php because I didn't need to specify that inside the URL. And here is the image with the words hello world, and if I click on this button which says click me, I'm getting the correct message. So everything is working fine in this very basic app that we've got here. So we're now ready to package it for distribution to end users, but in a way that they don't need to install PHP on their local machines. So for this, I'll need to install the entire PHP 8.3.11 into a subfolder underneath this current folder. So I can just create a new folder here and call it something like PHP -engine, like that, or in fact I'll just call it PHP runtime, like that. And I'll just extract everything in that zip file which came with the installation for PHP. Because if you remember in the previous video on PHP, it was just a matter of downloading the zip file and then just extracting everything out from that zip file into this directory. So we're just doing exactly the same here. We're just extracting everything out into this folder. So because it's quite a large file, 31 megabytes, it'll just take a few moments. I think the total size that it'll extract out to will be about 85 megabytes. So the entire file extraction has finished, and that took about 2 to 3 minutes. So what I'm doing now is that I'll just delete the actual files and folders that we don't need. We just want to have the very bare minimal runtime that the end users can use in order to run this app. So after some trial and error, I've discovered that we just need a few files. We don't need all these other DLLs and files. So as I mentioned earlier, this is just a hack that I discovered. It's not to say that it'll continue working or it'll work for you, but it's something that I've discovered that has worked in my situation, and I'm just showing you that it might be worth trying out if you wish to deliver a PHP application to end users, but they don't have PHP installed, and rather than them having to install the PHP themselves, you can just deliver this minimal runtime. So as regards these folders here, dev ext extras, we don't need them, I discovered, so I'll just delete them from this php-runtime folder. Similarly, for these other files here, so I'll just sort them alphabetically. So we don't need any file that doesn't begin with PHP. So I'll just delete all these files here that don't begin with PHP. And we do need to have a php.ini file. So for this, I can just click on the one that is php ini-production, just copy that and rename it to php.ini, and I can delete the these two here for production and development, like that. We don't need the PHP 8 Apache 2 underscore 4.dll. And then we don't need the PHP 8 PHP dbg.dll. So we're just left with these 7 files here. So this is the bare minimal runtime that we need to provide the users with so that they can run it on their systems without them having to install PHP. And so now if we return to the other directory, one above it, then we don't need the img folder because this will be extracted from the file that we provide them with. We don't need this zip file any longer because we've extracted the files from it, so we can just delete it. We need the far file, obviously, because this contains the functionality that we're giving to the users that they can use, and we need this index.php file as well, because this is the file that will run when they open the browser that points to the localhost port 8000. So now that we have this minimal number of files for the running of the application, what we need to do now is to, if you remember from the previous video on PHP, we had to create a script in order to start up the local web server so that the users can point the browser tab at that web server and run that application. So previously, in the previous video on PHP, we did that using a Windows batch command script. All that did was that it just ran the command php with the option to start up the local host at port 8000. So we just do the same, but we won't do it with the Windows batch script now because we don't need to. We can do that with the PHP runtime because we've got that underneath the current folder. We can just and that will be given or delivered to the end users as part of the package that they'll be receiving in the same zip file. So we can just ask them to extract the contents of that zip file, and then we can just ask them to run this PHP script, and the PHP script will use the actual PHP that will be inside the PHP-runtime subfolder. So for this, we can just create a simple text file using Notepad, like that, and we can just call it something like start server.php, like that. And this will just be a standard PHP script, but what it'll have at the very top is that it'll have the actual command that'll point the script to look at the subfolder called PHP-runtime and to find the actual command called PHP and to apply that command to the actual rest of this file. So basically this is telling where it says hash exclamation mark dot forward slash PHP-runtime forward slash PHP, that is telling the script where to locate PHP, which is in the subfolder called PHP runtime underneath the current folder. So after that we can just enter the rest of the PHP script. So the first thing we want to do is to start up the local web server. So the command normally is php minus capital S localhost colon 8000. So what we can do is that as we're running it inside the PHP itself, then we need to call it with popen, and then and what this popen does is that it just executes this within the actual Windows shell. So we can say start and then forward slash capital B. So this is telling the Windows shell to run this command without creating a window specifically for it, and then PHP hyphen runtime, and then backslash, and then we just need to close the double quotes. And then for the second parameter, we need to specify R for read-only, like that. And then after that, we need to call that popen from inside a pclose, like that. And then we need to echo out instructions to the user. And it'll say, now please double click on start app.html to start the app. And then after this, what we'll need as well is the bat file in order to run that PHP script. So once again, we can just create it by creating a new text document, and we'll just give it the BAT suffix like that. And then we can just go inside, and once again, we'll just use echo off in order to stop the echoing back of the command. And then as regards the location of the PHP command, it's in PHP hyphen runtime, and then backslash PHP. And then we want to run the script that's in the current directory, which is start server.php. And we just save that and close the file. So now if we just double click on it, does it work? Yes. So it's starting the local web server, but as well as that, it's displaying the message at the very start. So I think if we put a delay of 1 second, just to allow the server the time to start up in 1 second, that might be adequate just to display the actual message correctly. So once again, if we just run the runapp.bat, and there we are. So this is now displaying the message correctly, and it's saying that the web server has started. So what we need next is that we need to have the actual HTML page or the HTML file for that. So we just once again create a new text document and then rename it as start app.html, like that. And in this start app.html file, we can just add some functionality that will check to see whether the actual server is running, and if not, to ask the user to retry. So once again, we just write the normal HTML like that. So here is the HTML file. So to explain what happens here is that first of all we have the body, and in there we have a span tag which has the ID sp1, and it displays please wait, checking for server. And then what it does is that it enters into the script section here. It sets the global variable which is set which is called server found equals 0, and then it runs the function to check if server is found, which is this function here. And what this does is that this creates an Ajax object here, and it sends a post to localhost 8000 index.php. And if it finds this location, then it clears the timeout, and then it sets the server found global variable equals 1. And if the actual server or the location is not found after 2 seconds, then it calls this function here, which is called the Ajax timeout, and it sets the server found global variable to 0. And so after that, it comes across this line here, which is it sets the timeout to run this function here, which is called message or MSG start app, and it sets a timeout of 1 second. So it pauses for 1 second and then it runs this function, and then it checks for the server found global variable. If it's 1, then it redirects to that URL, which is localhost port 8000. Otherwise, it displays this message, please run app.bat, then click on this, and then it has this button object here, or button HTML object, and when the user clicks on this button, then it does a reload, and when it reloads, then it runs through these functions again. It runs through the script section again, and it tries to check to see whether the URL exists, whether the server is running. So we just start up the local server by clicking on run app.bat like that. So there it is, it's running now. So if we click on this HTML page, what happens? So I'll just do that now. So we're getting this message, please run app.bat, then click on this button. Okay, so I'm doing that, but we're getting the same message. So I'll just press F12 to see whether there's any issue going on here, or any bugs in the code. And it's saying that we're getting this error message saying that from origin null has been blocked by CORS policy. No access control allow origin header is present in the requested resource. So CORS policy stands for Cross-Origin Resource Sharing Policy, and what this does is that it's supposed to stop any security breaches. If, for example, we're trying to access across the domain using this JavaScript, then this is intended to stop that. So we can just bypass this by adding in a statement inside the PHP script, the index.php script, just to allow the actual access for this. So we do that by just going inside the index.php like that, and just adding a line at the top there saying header, and then access control allow origin colon, and then asterisk, which represents everything like that, and just save that. So now if we just restart the local web server by just closing this window and clicking on run app.bat again like that, and then if we now click on the start app.html like that, okay, so now it's still not working, so I'll just press F12 to see whether there are any error messages. And this time it's coming back with a 500 internal server error. So this looks like something, or some kind of issue inside the actual PHP itself. So I'll just take a look at the code for this, which is inside index.php. And so what this does is that when it runs, it extracts to this directory the cupguess.png, and so I think this might be causing the issue, because if it's there already and it's trying to extract to that folder, and if it exists already, it might be causing issues. So I'll just delete the folder, and I'll just go back to the browser, and I'll just refresh like that, and so now it seems to be working fine. And if I click on click me, and it's returning the correct message, but we're still getting this error message. So what I can do is that if I go back to the index.php file, and I just add in a test to see whether the folder exists, which is the image folder, so I can do an if statement, and an if isdir. So the function that tests to see whether the folder exists is called is_dir. So we want to put an exclamation mark in front of isdir. So that means if this folder does not exist, then extract to this folder. So I'll just save that. And so now if we return to the browser and do an F5 like that, so now we don't have any error messages. And if I click on the button which says click me, and now we're getting the correct message as well. So if we go back to the files that we need to deliver to the end user on the different machines, then if we look at the files that the users need to see, when they extract the files into a folder, then they need to have the index.php in this folder, but they don't need to have the myfile.file because they don't need to click on that or to look at that. So what we can do, we can just move the myfile.file into the PHP runtime folder like that. And similarly, for the startserver.php, they don't need to see that either or be aware of that, so we can do the same for that. And because we have moved the files, then we'll need to change the location accordingly in the other files. So as regards the require statement here, then this needs to be php -runtime and then / myfile.file. And as regards the run app.bat, so as regards the start server.php, that's now inside php-runtime / start server.php. And I think that should be sufficient. So if I now click on run app.bat like that, and click on the start app.html like that, so that's working fine. If, for example, the user doesn't click on run app.bat but clicks immediately on start app.html, what happens? Well, the actual server seems to be still running, even though I've closed down the window that ran that server. So for this, I think we'll need to make sure that if we close the window, it stops the actual server, because we don't want processes to be running in the background that are not intended to be running after they're finished being used. So I think for this we need to go back to the PHP script, which is the start server.php script, and where it runs the command start / B to run without a window, we just delete the /B and then save that. And so now if I just return to the start app.html, and now I've made sure that the server isn't running, and I just click on this page, I'm now getting this message saying please run app.bat, then click on this button and just click again, and it's saying please wait, and it's saying again please run app.bat. So I just do that like that. So now the server is running. So if I just click on this button, and so now we've got the app running, and if I click on click me, that's working fine as well. And so if I now close this window like that, and if I now do a refresh on this page, now I'm getting this error message. So we now know for sure that the server isn't running. So I think this is now ready to be packaged and to be distributed to the end users. So for this, I can just select everything, or in fact I can just delete the img folder because that will be extracted when it's run for the first time. So as regards these files and folders, I just send them to the zip file, to the compressed folder, and so that comes to a total of just 4 megabytes. So I can just send that in an email to the users, and they can just click on that and then extract these out onto an empty folder. Let's say I just create an empty folder like that and just paste the contents in there. They can just click on the run app.bat, and then they can just click on the start app.html, and they'll have this app running on their local desktop without them having to install PHP. So over here I'm now on a different Windows computer which doesn't have the PHP installed, so I'll just copy across the zip file into this blank folder like that, and I'll just extract the files from the zip file. And first of all, I'll just click on the start app.html, and as expected, it's coming back saying that we need to run the run app.bat. So I'll just do that now. I'll just click on run app.bat in order to start the web server, and there it is. and I'll just click on this button again. And so now we have the hello world with the image of the cup, and if I click on the click me button, it returns the correct message. And so everything seems to be working fine now in this Windows machine, which doesn't have the PHP installed. And so as regards the size of this zip file that I needed to distribute, so that was just a matter of 4.5 megabytes. So that's about it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it useful and informative. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. And if you wish to help me out on this channel, and please do visit buymeacoffee.com/Ian Lowe. Until next time, look after yourself and have a nice day.